Welcome to Dear Art Producer, a podcast connecting the photography and video community with art producers. Drawing on her agency experience some years ago, photography agent Heather Elder penned an open letter to art producers discussing the finer points of working with one another. This podcast takes that idea and will introduce you to different art producers, share the stories of their diverse career paths, explore what it means to stay relevant, and examine industry topics such as marketing, estimating, directing, websites, and more.
Hi, welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today we welcome freelance art producer Shari Goetz. She's worked at many great agencies over the years, and her career path led her to work on accounts like Nikon, HP, and Amtrak. Her focus now is mainly pharma projects, a subject that we will tackle here today. And I've known Shari for years, but only just learned that she has triplets. And when I read that, I thought, wow, good thing she's a producer. Welcome, Shari.
Hey, Heather.
How are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. You have triplets.
I know.
Oh, my goodness. How old are they?
Well, they're 26 years old now.
Oh, my God.
They're all boys and fraternal, so they don't look alike. And they're all completely different from each other. And it's been really crazy, but really fun. And, you know, this is my life. So that's what it is.
And honestly, I really wasn't joking when I said, thank God you're a producer, or maybe that's why you're a producer, because managing three kids, three boys, all the same age as triplets is definitely something to produce.
I produced them.
That's fantastic. Wow.
No, I was working, as a producer, or we called ourselves art buyers then, before I had them. And I think it prepared me for what was coming.
I bet. Well, let's talk a little bit about what you did before you had triplets and what your career path was to kind of get you to where you are today.
Well, my first job was as the assistant for an art buyer at an agency called Warwick, Welsh and Miller. And they were the Seagram's agency, and it was in the Seagram's building. And I wasn't really looking to be in advertising, but I wasn't able to find a position right away in a museum. Like, I wanted to work at the Museum of Art in the city, the Met, and I wasn't able to get a job there. And then I thought, I just have to get, a job somehow related to art. And yeah, we sent out an interview to her, and she hired me on the spot as her second assistant. And this was 1980, where the art buyer, I don't know how long there had been art buyers at that point, but she had been doing it for a while. I think she came from another department. And it really was a completely different world than, in our jobs. It was very, very different.
It really was. I feel like I should start a podcast called It Used to Be. I feel like so many of my sentences are, well, it's not that anymore.
Right. Not at all.
Just today, I had conversations with two of the photographers I represent, and I think it's hard when you've been a successful photographer or a successful rep or an art buyer, or a creative person, anybody really in this industry during that time. And, you have to kind of really rethink and evolve how you're thinking in order to stay relevant today.
Yes.
It's such a different industry.
Yes, it's very different. And people work so long. They work so many hours, as I do on my projects now. And it was really sort of genteel then. People are working constantly, and there's so much more to every different project. I mean, they're expecting so much from everybody. It's evolving in all areas, in all different ways. And in some ways, it's been great for us because our responsibilities are more interesting and more broader. But in some ways, I think it's very exhausting to everybody. I
think you're right. I also hear people say, it's just not as fun as it used to be.
Yeah.
But I think you kind of just have to reframe that. Like you said, things were so much more genteel then. I remember, doing my quick faxed estimates and then going home to lunch at a photo shoot and then, maybe doing a portfolio show in the afternoon. It was all very social and very relationship building, and everybody's goal was to create really great work. Right. And I would think people still have the same goal today, but I think the requirements and how people define your clients, especially how they define great work and what they want out of their agency partners, is really different, which is why our roles have changed so much.
Right. I think it was, the technology, the internet and what that brought, but also think about the cameras and how the photographers use their equipment now and what they can do. I mean, I remember film, right? Yeah. Nobody saw anything really till they saw Polaroids, but nobody saw anything till we got it back developed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you had to hire a photographer that you knew was going to cover your back and get that shot, because you needed one hero shot, that shot that was going to, be on the, inside Vanity Fair or up on Times Square or, some cool billboard or magazine ad somewhere. Like, you needed that hero shot. And now we need those hero shots, but it's more because you want hero for the content that you're pushing out there, and you need all these other supporting images and motion and GIFs and cinemagraphs. And I'm wondering, from your point of view, what are the clients asking of you? Like, how is your relationship, having been at agencies and working with clients? Like, what are the clients asking of you or requiring of you that is so different?
It's an interesting thing, because years ago, we really didn't have a relationship directly with the clients. There was an account group who dealt with the clients, and then the account group dealt with the creative. And I don't think the creative saw the clients other than when they were presenting, right? I don't think there was all this client contact. I mean, I'm on the phone with all the clients now. And they want so much. They need a lot of assets, in quotes, and they want so much material, and, they want to populate their websites and they have all sorts of usages. So when we bring all of this to the photographer, like, how do we do it? And how many days, and what is the budget, and can we do as much as they want in the time that we have for the budget? So there's always a way to put it all together, but it requires a lot of talks and meetings and what's your priorities, what's the most important thing. And then when the clients are actually on the shoot, some of them are perfectly lovely and respectful, and some of them are demanding on the shoot additional shots while we're shooting, or to see things when we're not ready to show them. And there are a few that really make it much harder for us. And I always want to be the one who's totally respectful to everybody. But if they're not being quite as respectful to us, it's very difficult. So, yeah, there's a lot that goes on a photo shoot. Let's
back up for a second, because you've said something really interesting that got me thinking about the role of an art producer and the role of an account person.
Right.
And you said earlier that you've never had so much contact with a client as you do today.
Right.
So it definitely used to be that the account person would manage that. And I've been commenting for years how surprised I am sometimes with the questions that get back to me. There are questions that can easily be answered by an art producer or a account person, but for some reason they're getting passed off. I would say that the reason is they want to show the client that they asked, or they're afraid of, they're fearful, or, they just want to cross all their T's and dot all their I's so that they can say, well, I asked. And I feel like the roles have been really different in terms of account people and how they manage and what they're required to manage. It's almost like the production is being put on you, and all the other account stuff is happening with the account people.
Right. Right. And I also feel, as a freelance person, I don't know if other freelancers feel this way, I'm part of this shoot, I'm part of this particular project, but I'm not, I represent you to them, but I'm not part of the agency. So do I have the authority to say things that might not be that well received, even though I'm going to present it very carefully and gently? So it's a very difficult position that we're in now. And I don't know, I don't think it's only me. And I'm not sure.
It's definitely not you. Yeah. It's definitely not you, because first of all, there's so many freelancers out there. Right. We've gone to such a gig society that I can't keep track of who's where and what they're working on. And, So there's that. And I think you're right, because as a freelancer, you also want to get asked back.
Right.
So
right.
You want them to keep you on for a little bit of time.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's really interesting. How do you think agencies are changing their relationship with their clients because of all of these changes? Like, what do you see happening? You've been in lots of different agencies. You know, how do you think they're trying to stay relevant and for these clients who are starting to take things in-house, or, you know, go into a production company or some sort of digital agency or something different, a different format?
Yeah, that's definitely happening. I'm not sure how the agencies are coping, truthfully. I think they're changing. Some of them are changing their model and are not being like a traditional agency. Some of them are becoming more like a media agency. One of the agencies I worked for a really long time, and I still, you know, they're like my family. They're doing lots of videos for things and not so much traditional photo shoots or campaigns. And I guess that's how they ended up as a smaller medium agency, being able to still be in business. So everything is changing. I'm not sure how the account people are being instructed about what their responsibilities are, because they really don't seem to know that they're supposed to be managing the clients. And, you know, I don't want to ever say the wrong thing to the clients either. I don't know what they've told them. So I really would like them, if possible, to sort of stay in the middle of it. But I don't know. And some clients are there doing their work, their other work. So they're really great, because then you go over and say, come on over, we have stuff to show you. So they're not all, you know, hyper focused on what we're doing. It's like, why is it taking so long to light this first shot? And they say, well, it takes a long time to light the first shot. The rest of it goes much faster, you'll see. Or take a look at the schedule. Remember I gave you that schedule?
Right.
Can you take a look at that so you'll know exactly what's coming next?
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's what happens. So I'm not sure what the solution is about the account group situation. I just think us art buyers and art producers and content producers have to be really careful. Yes, to not alienate ourselves from our future employment.
We talk a lot about on this podcast the idea of how your role and my role is one of being a translator.
Right.
And being able to translate each other's language. And it's not just you and me, or you and the photographer, you know, me and the creative. It also goes down to the client level and being able to translate what they want.
Right.
And, you know, we've had this conversation a lot about library shoots.
Yes.
Because like you said, clients want to add a lot of content and keep adding shots. And as a group and individually as photographers and guys who do video, we all had to kind of get together and be like, okay, how do we respond to this? Because we want to be accommodating. But at the same time, I can't keep adding.
Right.
Because you won't have time to get anything good out of anyone. Because now we're directing. You know, it's not just setting up a shot and getting one hero shot. Like, you want variety and content. So even if there's no motion, I'm still directing a still shoot to get you all of that.
Right.
So we've had to, you know, kind of try to educate people about the idea of, okay, we'll prioritize. Like, what are your most important things? And if we can stay on schedule and you're approving things quickly and the wardrobe's working, and, you know, we'll add as we can. But we've had to just, you know, put our foot down, because eventually what was happening, clients were coming back and saying, I didn't get a lot from this scenario. And you're like, okay, but yeah, we had 10 scenarios, but you added 5 more.
I know. They have to add 3 more days. Well, yeah. What I do is we have to have a shot list, and we have to stick with it as much as we can in terms of timing. I know sometimes. And then what I always say to them, well, for today, this is what we have scheduled. And if we have time at the end, we can do that. But if we go into overtime, this is how much it's going to cost you per hour. And I have a thing that I have every possible person who would be there and their hourly rate. And I hand it to them. I said, this is the hourly rate for overtime. So it's okay to go into overtime. I mean, if we're rotating talent, someone's got to be fresh. But this is how much we're gonna add into your budget. It's going to be an overage. So
I love that you do that. Yes. I think that some producers are afraid to talk, art producers are afraid to talk overtime, because a lot of times when I'm bidding a job, and I'll say, hey, can I put 2 hours of overtime in here? No, don't put it in. Okay, but you're asking for a lot here, and there's a possibility I'm going to have to ask for it on set. It's fine. Let's ask for it on set. Don't ask for it up front, which I understand. But at the same time, then it looks like we haven't done our job,
right?
And gone over, as opposed to being forward thinking and saying, look, this makes me nervous. Here are the possibilities. Here are the things we can do to stay on track so we don't hit this number or this time stamp. But it's complicated.
It is. And it helps when you have a multi-day shoot, really, because some days are going to go much better than other days, and you can fill stuff in. But if you have say you have a 2-day shoot and you're doing like 2 location changes per day, there's no way to add anything in. There's so many variables. So you have to say, we can't do it. We just can't do it. It's just, we'll end up being here at 10 o'clock at night. And there's, every shoot is like infinitely complex in its own way. So you kind of don't know what's even possible each time, right? There's so many things that can happen that you don't anticipate, right? So you have to always allow for that too. And I don't want to police the client. I really don't want to do that. I don't think I want them to be happy and have a great time. And my job really is to be managing the shoot to make sure that the photographer and everybody else has what they need and everybody's doing what they need to do. There's a ton of people who have to all do their job for this to work. And I have to make sure of that. And then talent, you managing the talent too. That's a lot. So
it is. It's a lot.
So
it's a lot.
I think it's too much.
Do you see the producer hired by the photographer as your kind of complement and your partner together in this?
It depends upon the person. I mean, ideally, that's what happens, is that we're working together, we're filling in for each other. I'm saying to him or her, this is what's happening next. And she's like, yes, or whatever. But sometimes they're not, because they're working on their next project too, and they're not that focused on what's going on. So I have to run and get them and fill them in. So, that happens too. So it's really, it could be anything. Any shoot can be anything. And if you have a magical shoot, which my favorite shoot I call a magical shoot, is where everybody brings their A game. And the wardrobe stylist is amazing. The hair and makeup is amazing. The digital tech is fantastic. The photographer is the best person we've ever worked with in the world. And everybody does exactly what needs to happen to make this go perfectly. And that means the client isn't harassing us for more shots while we're shooting, right? And those shoots, the producer is being really helpful in his or her own way and really agreeable, right? Like, I just want people to say, yes, okay, let's do it. Or if it's an issue or problem, let's figure out the best way to do this now that this has happened.
There's such a difference with working with a producer who's positive in their putting up their boundaries.
I know.
Then, right? Because my experience with them is creating the estimates, and I'm always taking the challenges you bring me and I bring them to them to see about how we can figure that out in the estimate. And there are producers where I just don't want to work with anymore, because every time I bring them something, I don't want to bring them that either, but we have to come up with some sort of solution. And the solution could be, we can't do it.
Right.
Or the solution could be, here's how we do it, but these are our changes. So we're all in the same industry, have the same industry challenges. And I don't want to listen every time to why we can't. Let's figure out how we can. So I agree.
I don't want to work with anyone who's surrounded by a big no. I want to work with people who are yes. Yeah. Like, just say to me yes, and then we'll figure it out. And we don't have to tell anybody that we still have to figure it out, but we have to probably get the photographer involved and let him or her say, okay, this is what's possible. What is possible? Some things are not possible. So, and I want to work with people who are a big yes. And that's what I try to do, but I don't always have control of that. So
Let's talk about the process, like, from discovering and finding the photographer, getting your attention from the beginning, all the way through to getting the job approved.
Right.
Like, how does that process start for you? Like, do your creatives come to you? Do you get the brief already? Like, how is that happening?
Well, that also varies, Heather. So many times I'll hear from a creative, we're going to have a shoot coming up. It's going to be for this client. We don't have any budget yet. We don't have any idea who we're using, but this is the flavor I want. And by the way, I looked in communication arts. They look at the photo annuals and they say, I'm going to use one of your guys. We saw Andy Anderson. We love him. And then, then he'll send me an email with maybe some things, maybe see some layouts, whatever. And then it'll get involved with the project manager and budgets and talent and what are we shooting, what are we shooting and where does it need to be and all of that. So meanwhile, once he sends me Andy or whoever else it is, I'll have an idea of who else he or she needs to see. So then I'll just compile a bunch of links, and sometimes I send 10 links. That's what you should know. I'll never send more than 10 links because that's a lot, but I'll send 10 links, and if they can't find 3 people that they like, then I'll send them like 5 more. But like if we have like a decent budget, I know I can come to you for Andy. But if I know that this client is like, it's like a one-day shoot, and a lot of times I was working with somebody at one of the pharma agencies, and every time this account person gave me such a low budget. And I'm like, I need more money. I mean, if you have 6 talent, we're not gonna be able to do this. I need more money. And he's like, well, this is what you have. So we have to always figure out how to work around that. So that's how it starts. It starts with them probably having an idea of who they want. And then I have these files. I use Safari. So I have in my Safari, I have all these files with categories of photographer and also by location, because sometimes they really want to shoot and who knows where the client is and the client can't travel and we have to go to Texas or whatever. So there's so much. So that's how we start the process, and they start looking at the links.
And how do people, like, what catches your eye? I mean, we've got photographers who are listening who, probably target you with email blasts and direct mail pieces, and maybe they've won awards or, all the things that are in their toolbox. They go into sourcebooks, and everybody, again, you and I are saying over and over, but the rules are different for every situation here. Right. But what are the things what are your go-to places when you're looking for some inspiration or you're looking for new people to share with your team? Well,
I do use some of the source books still, like Ad Edge. I get stuff, I'm working from home. They send it. I still look at workbook. Sometimes I'll have like a bunch of agents. So like I'll have you in a category with like, 20 agents that I feel that I could work well with them, and I know that they can do this. Any of their photographers would be great. So I look there, and then I look through their whole roster. But when I'm looking at their link, there's something that you feel when you see a photograph, like it's so beautiful, or you feel it in your heart. There's a way that you feel when you see it that it could be subjective. It could just be what I like. It could be my taste. But you just know when you see something that's just magnificent. And if you have a decent budget, you can hire someone who does magnificent work. And sometimes I find the diamond in the rough, just by looking at all the emails I get, or sometimes I do this all the time. So when I'm reading a magazine and I like the image in there, I note the name and then I look that person up, because some of the editorial stuff is really fantastic what's going on. So that's part of it, is like what makes me feel a certain way.
I can see that. I mean, I feel the same way too when a photographer reaches out to me. I don't always have spots on the roster where I can consider them, right. But I'm kind of taking it in, and in my entire career, there's been, a decent amount that rise to the top, but not many. There's a lot of stuff that feels very similar and exists on the same place in the spectrum, you know.
Right.
And those people that rise to the top, I'm constantly paying attention to.
Right, right. Because you know that in order for them to be there, they must have done something on these shoots that was, I would say my word, magical or extraordinary, right? There was something that happened. So, and not everybody has the ability to do that, to get that shot.
Definitely not. Everything is not created equal with these photographers, right? You can't insert photographer here and know you're going to get the same thing. And it is a combination of so many things that create that beautiful, you know, library of content.
Right.
And it requires everybody showing up with their A game.
Right. The A team.
Yeah.
You know, whenever I'm on a shoot, I know there could be a B person, but then one B person will not ruin the A team.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. You know, when I first started my career, I always talked about the difference between being a photographer and a professional photographer. And the idea of being a professional photographer isn't just that you get paid for it, but you're managing a team.
Right.
You know, and you are at the top.
Right.
So you need to find the best possible people that are going to make your production shine. But you also have to be responsible for them and, you know, make sure you find the people that are the right person for a particular job too.
Right. You know who you're, and I think the photographers who have a solid team and work with them often, they are doing the best job because there's no instruction. They just share a look and the person knows what to do. It's all energetic almost. And that makes things go much faster too. But sometimes somebody's sick and they can't make it. And, you know, that happens. And
that's true. But I do think from the photographer's point of view, one other thing that's changed a lot is this idea of client service. Right? You used to call a photographer and you'd know that person would deliver that shot. And that's really all that photographer cared about, was getting you that shot. It was creative at no other cost.
Right.
And now I see, you know, people in my group, and I talk to other reps whose photographers are doing the same thing. There's a different attention being placed on the process and the experience that you're having through the bidding process, through the contact, even in the beginning, just getting to know the photographer when there's no job involved, through the bidding, through the treatments, through the creative calls, and then ultimately through the shoot and finally the delivery of the final files, whether or not there's posts involved or editing, if there's motion. And so there's really this level of attention that is being spent on that process that I don't think was before in the same way.
No way. This is all probably, I would even say the last 10 years. I think the last 10 years it's been escalating to this, where why do they need to do treatments? I mean, that's the last 4 or 5 years, and it's TV bleeding into print. I feel like the TV, the print digital, whatever we're doing, all of our media that we do, broadcast is sort of defining us now. I don't know why that is. Maybe because we have so many combined shoots. And there's so much expected of the photographer. It almost seems unreasonable to me.
I agree. I absolutely, I mean, I see the value, and, you know, when you create an amazing treatment, you rise to the top. So we appreciate the opportunity to do that. But the photographer studio model is so different than the production studios model with the directors. They have people to help them with their treatments, and they could be on a shoot and someone's working on the treatment for them and they give a little input. These photographers are spending hours and hours and hours and staying up late and doing it on airplanes and getting up early because they have shoots, and, you know, they don't have the financial resources to hire someone to do that because it's hard to be a photographer right now. Right. So that treatment has really put a big burden on, I mean, there's positives too. I'm definitely not complaining about it, but there's there's a crunch on time and resources.
So then one photographer sends a treatment. Okay, so we've picked our 3 photographers that we want to bid, and we've sent them their work just so they can see if it's okay for us to bid them. Meanwhile, they come back, okay, and I've already gotten a treatment from one person, and the estimates are actually due in 2 days. And, I have to get them in, make sure they're right, put the parts that I need to add in there, which is talent and whatever else is going on, and then get them into some sort of other place so that they're part of a larger thing, and it's in 2 days. So you guys have to put together a treatment in 2 days so that it goes along with this big estimate we're sending them, because now we're shooting in 4 weeks and, whatever. And I don't think it's fair to ask you to do that in 2 days. But there's nothing I can do, because sometimes the other, I said, well, if not everybody has a treatment on it, I said, I don't think we should send any treatments. And they said, why? This person already put this effort in. Don't you think that they should have their treatment seen? That's a valid point, right?
Valid point.
So I'm not sure what to do about the treatments now. I think we have to figure out a way for you to somehow put the cost of the treatments into somehow the estimate you're sending. And I don't know how you can do it.
You would be revered to goddess status if you figured a way to do that. And hearing you speak that way, I think all the photographers listening right now are cheering. Yeah. I mean, I want to be fair.
And then even on the shoots, we're asking so much of our photographers and their team. So many people on the shoot are going to have a say. I've been on shoots where there's 8 clients, and I've heard of one at an agency where we had 14 clients. We have 8 clients, and all of the other people from the agency. And this poor photographer is having to be the most flexible, lovable, adorable, funny gal, and still get 15 shots done today in 3 locations. I don't know what's going on.
All the while with a smile on their face.
God forbid they get angry, because that's the end.
Yeah. Well, and I think that talks to how much competition there is out there.
Right.
There's, so many people who do what we do. So it's very easy for you. You've got lots of choices. You can send along 10 links. In the past, you might not have been able to do that, or you would have had to call in 10 portfolios. And
well, my arms were a lot stronger then.
Oh, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, we could do advertising in the 80s and 90s.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. So once you get a job approved, do you actually back up? I have another question for you though. When you're bidding 3 photographers, do you share who they're bidding against with each other? And what's your philosophy on that?
I think it's fair to share the other people, but I'm always afraid of someone, I'm not saying you, Heather, but some other agent or whoever is doing this, somehow calling you guys and saying, what are you bidding? I'm bidding. But the truth is, I like to get all the bids to be almost the same so that it's just a creative call. So, but it feels slightly uncomfortable to do that for me, but I do it. I do it. And I don't know if you remember this, but this is personal, we did a shoot with Andy a few years ago. That's why he's in my mind. And I knew I had to have 3 bids, and these clients were a little wacky. And I asked you guys to bid 3 of your photographers. So this way, no matter what, it would be okay, because one of your people would have gotten it, because I knew it was going to be a lot of work with this particular client. So
and I'm always appreciative of being a resource for someone, right? So that's a positive for our group. And I always am open to, doing something like that, because then it does even the playing field. I'm going to see them all and be like, okay, look, you guys, all these fees should be at this level. Everybody's bottom lines are a little bit different here, but the approach is different. So it does make it just about creative.
Right. That's what I want for every project. I don't want people making decisions about money. But then sometimes you get somebody who's really going very, very low. and you know that they are not really bidding properly because you know they're going to go over or they're going to be skimping or something. And I'll go back to them and say, you're very, very low. I said, you can still be low bid, but you need to be in the range, or I don't trust that you're going to be able to do this job. So you have to rethink your bid. So,
well, that makes you a good producer because, with the phone calls that I get, we want to work with your photographer, but he or she is, $30,000 over. And I'm like, where? Like, we have just like cut and cut and cut. And then, when they do share a little bit more, you're like, oh, well, they're not doing the casting right, or they're not bidding enough for their talent.
The talent,
like,
you know what?
They need to up that. Don't have me cut. Have them bring it up.
Let me ask you a question. Are all of the agencies or companies, do they have talent people there who specifically work on talent?
At the ad agencies? There are some, not all of them. There definitely are some, and there are some agency, and those agencies, I'm not bidding the talent. Right, they bid it, and they stick the number in there. And I actually prefer that because they have relationships with these talent and these agencies that they can, say, this is what we bid on the last project. This is what we got on this. And, so it actually works out better, I think, in the long run when the agency does manage it. But I think if you're a bigger agency, if you're a small agency, you might not get taken advantage.
I mean, the talent contracts now also have to be very well done because of all the usages and everything that's going on. And then with California, where you have to pay the person for the day, which is a nightmare every time. It's getting very complex. And when I was working at this pharma company the last couple of years, I haven't worked for them for a little while. They have a whole talent department, and they're fantastic. So, like, if I'm going with a television shoot and we're doing print and whatever, video, TV, everything together in this whatever amount of time, they handle all of the contracts. So I send everything out, but they're getting all the contracts and they're making sure the payment is going to be there that day, the last day they're shooting, which is such a pain, but we have to do that. And that helps a lot.
I think it's enormous and is necessary because the legal issues associated with it are enormous if you get it wrong. And I don't think it's fair to put on to a producer or a rep or a photography studio who doesn't have the training or the time to like, it's not part of the description.
Right. We need these talent companies to be part of every project now because everything's so complex. And
I also feel the same way about our terms and starting to feel the same way about our terms and conditions. Right. I get these NDAs and sometimes people are putting usage in the NDAs, which blows me away because I'm like, how can you put usage in an NDA? I don't even know what I'm looking at. So I can't agree to this until I know what the rates are and know what so I've got to read those with a fine-tuned code. And then the terms and conditions come, and a lot of time there are these blanket terms and conditions for any vendor, which don't always apply to us. But a lot of times they're not favorable for a photographer at all. But you have this big agency or holding company managing the process on their end, and we have me and my photography studio, right? And I'm not a lawyer. I mean, I can read it and I know what I'm reading, but I'm not a lawyer. So it's gotten really, really complicated.
I think the talent now is maybe the most difficult part for all of us, especially since we shoot so much in California.
Well, and people who are shooting video and now are they SAG and is it broadcast?
That's a nightmare. That's such a nightmare for us. Yeah, because if it's a union shoot for them, and then we're taking over the location that they built, we have to hire these union people to be there. You're walking a tightrope sometimes in our positions where it was never anything this complex before.
And the training doesn't really exist. It's baptism by fire, I think.
Right. It is baptism by fire. I didn't know that people in California had to get paid, at the end of their work days the first time I shot out there.
Yep. No.
I'm like, what?
And people are learning it the hard way. And they're only learning it because of some loophole in the law that a lawyer is taking advantage of. And now, it's kind of spread like wildfire. And it's... Look, I'm not saying we shouldn't follow the laws by any means.
Let's not follow the laws.
But it's not how our industry had worked. So no one was really being accountable for it. And now people are paying attention and learning. And I think, a lot of times people are like, yeah, I don't want to shoot in California, so we're sending more work to Austin or.
Yeah. I've shot many times in Texas. I love shooting in Texas.
Yeah.
Yep. It's much, much better. Yes, we've done a lot, but Texas doesn't always have everything.
No.
So a lot of times they do. And they're very gracious there.
Well, let me just ask you a few last little questions about being a freelancer, and because we're kind of getting to the end. As a freelancer, and we kind of touched on this earlier about how we're in this kind of gig economy. Right. Do you find it really hard to find your next job, or does it just kind of happen through word of mouth and the relationships that you have?
I think it happens by word of mouth 80% of the time, and then I'll get a period where I'm not working, and I'm like, well, will I ever work again? And then I kind of start reaching out to people that I know who are in various agencies, just, is anything going on there? Yeah. But that happens too. Sometimes I just use the downtime to just regroup my life. But sometimes I don't really need that much regrouping. So it really depends. Sometimes you'll get a gig that will last for years, and that's very good. And even though you're freelancing, you're really part of that company. But it's changing.
Goes back to something we talked about earlier, this idea of relationship building. And we talk a lot about it on the podcast. And it really comes down, our business industry really comes down to the relationships that we have in terms of trust and openness and transparency. And, you need a photographer, you can go to your rep list. So know who you can trust.
Right.
So for the photographers out there who are listening, the idea of building relationships would be something really important for them to walk away with and have their own relationships in addition to their reps. And for the art producers who are out there, especially those that are freelance, and they know this because they live it. It is also the relationships that we all have and have spent a lot of years making.
Yes. I think for the photographers listening, see, I hardly ever see people because I'm mostly working from home all the time. And then when I'm at an agency, I'm in the middle of a big production. So I used to see people. I used to see one person a day, every day. And then I had one of the agencies, I had something called the book review, which every Friday I had a few people that I saw over the last couple of weeks who I think they should see. And some photographers actually walked out of the conference room with a layout. Wow. So that's the way it used to be, and it's nothing like that now. I think if you get any kind of projects, even if it's editorial, just make sure you meet everybody. Don't just do your job. Spend as much time as you can talking to the photo editor, whoever is from the magazine or however that works. Make a connection with them. Get their contact information. Keep in touch with them. I don't know how they get into agencies to see people now. I'm not quite sure how that works. Everybody's so overworked. And then on the shoot, just do a really, really good job, because I find if we have a magic shoot, then the whole agency wants to shoot with that person. So all the projects that come up after that is like, you think you can shoot with her again? You think you can shoot with him? Oh, you got to shoot with him. So it really works like that, and you'll just get more and more work that way.
I think that is a fantastic thing to end on.
Yes.
We cannot stress enough the importance of besides creating new work. If you're not creating new work, get out there and create more relationships and new relationships.
Right, exactly. That's the most important thing.
Well, that's awesome. Oh, Shari, this was such a great conversation. It was so natural and easy, and I felt like I didn't even have to refer to our questions, and we just kind of chatted today, which was great.
Agreed. It was wonderful for me as well. Thank you, Heather. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. In an industry where the rules are always changing, it's helpful to hear from those on the front line. Heather Elder is the visionary behind notesfromarepsjournal.com. Visit her website for industry updates, stunning photography and video, and the artist behind the work.